Hi, and welcome to another edition of Babes with Books. I'm here with Maya and Shauna. My name's Leslie, and today we are going to talk about House of Silk by Anthony Horowitz. This is a mystery, Victorian mystery, based on the Sherlock Holmesian genre, and it's actually the first in forever, actually the only author to ever be actually endorsed by the Conan Doyle estate to actually write a book. It's we'll talk about whether I like it or not, but basically it starts as if it's written by Watson, and the story has been locked away because it was too violent, or just the content was just too much for people of that age. And so the precept is that it had to wait till people were ready for that type of story and that type of content. So it was really neat that it was written by Watson and actually a Sherlock Holmes mystery. So yeah, I guess I'll start by asking my lovely ladies what you guys thought of the book.
I really liked the book. I listened to it. I like to listen to books on my drives up to see my daughter, and it was a really entertaining book to listen to. I'm getting quite attached to all these audiobooks that I've been listening to lately. It's a really fun way, especially when the reader is such a great voice and he does the voices and stuff. And this story was very fast-paced, very interesting. I almost wanted to pull over to hear what was going on, so I just about didn't get to Edson. But anyway, so I really enjoyed the book.
Very good. I liked it too. I definitely liked it. I enjoyed the characters that Anthony Horowitz wrote. I felt that he did a good job of portraying Sherlock and Watson. I mean, I think we all have our favorites, and he did a really good job. The mystery was entertaining, and it was dark and modern rather than being a kind of classic retelling. So it wasn't dry at all, and I enjoyed that part of it. I felt
he really brought, in my opinion, I felt that Horowitz really brought the Sherlock Holmes genre into the modern century, and made it so that, you know, some of today's contemporary readers might want to go back and read some of the Sherlock Holmes from the past, just so that they can understand where it all comes from. Right. Of course, many people are familiar with the TV show and the movies, and they're not as familiar with the stories and the actual writing, because it is written in an older kind of text.
And I had some respect for the author for finding a way to not have to change his writing style, because he would be a modern author. So he had to find a gimmick, I guess, to bring it into that Sherlock Holmes canon. And by saying that Watson locked away a story and said it could only be published 100 years after, then that allowed for that, because it was too shocking for those times. And so I thought that it was a really neat ploy of the authors, actually, and I think I really gave him credit for finding a way to do that.
Yeah. Speaking of the shockingness of it, so this book, and I'm just going to tell you right now, this is a bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want some spoilers, plug your ears for a second. But basically this book is about child molestation, and that this mystery that he's trying to unsolve ends up that there's these boys that are being used in the House of Silk by these men. And I guess when I was reading this, and I guess doing some research afterwards, some of the things that came up was, it used to be in mysteries that murder was the worst thing you could do, and that's what mysteries were about. And now we have to shock people a little bit more, and so things like child molestation, it makes it more modern. So I guess my question is, by doing that, are we then going to make things like child molestation a thing of like, oh well, that's old news, there's worse things than that? Just start us off with a hard question.
That's so pleasant.
Is society becoming more desensitized? Like, is murder just an everyday thing, so we don't even think twice? Really, like, this child molestation is a big deal, and I don't know, it seems to be happening more and more, or maybe people are talking more and more about it. But it's a topic that always seems to be in the news, whereas I'm sure murders happen every day, but you don't necessarily hear about those. So I agree with.
Or we hear about them and we don't, it's just like, oh yeah, there's
Whatever.
another murder. Like, I mean, even books like young adult books all have, I mean, children killing each other. If you look at Hunger Games,
Games, yeah.
as a good example. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Maya?
I guess I look at it differently in that it's not, I think that books are, they try to form an emotional connection. And I think that bringing a child into the story, most of us have a child in our life in one way or the other, whether we have one ourselves, nieces, nephews, friends, children's, or, you know, you just know, right? And I think there's a more, you're able to pull more at the emotional, and then you're able to bring somebody into the story more. Whereas murder is, it does feel very impersonal. You don't know, most people don't know someone that's been murdered or even had a violent crime committed against them. Whereas, like, just the idea of that happening to a child immediately appeals to you. It appeals to your
Have our backup immediately.
Yeah, and
Oh my
so
God.
I think that hooks the reader more, and I don't know that it's desensitizing it
So
at all.
then what do you feel about that being used as a hook? Like, basically it's a ploy to get you to read a book.
I mean,
Does that cheapen
books
the
are.
fact that people have been through this very serious thing?
Wow, Leslie.
That's a
Okay,
serious question.
us babes with books here
Wow.
really want to. Jeez.
I thought it was coming when I was reading the book, and there was the boys, the gang of boys there. I thought, are we going down that path? I hesitated for a moment, thinking, is this what's going to happen? And so maybe it was a ploy. Maybe.
But art imitates life, right? So ploy seems like such a mean word to use for an author, but I don't.
I like the way you put that, art imitates life, because perhaps before, like 100 years ago or 50 years ago, books were about murder because that was the worst thing that could happen. And it's not like child molestation wasn't happening then, but people didn't really know about it. It wasn't talked about. And whereas now this is more of a reflection of our society and things that people want to talk about. And
I also think that, yes, another thing is I think there is a lot more of an emotional story to be written about that violent crime, such as child molestation, or there are a lot about like women getting stolen. Like you always, I think there's a lot of emotional appeal to that survivor story. Rather than where do you go for murder? All you can deal with is the grief that's left behind, or a classic mystery whodunit. But when you're involving this, you're involving a lot more psychology, I guess, and a lot more interest in there's more
after?
beyond that story, rather than just that's what happens. So I do also think that's why authors employ it more. There is a book, it's on a lot of the like top 10 or top books of 2016 by Zoe Whittle. It's called The Best Kind of People, and it's again about a teacher who is accused of child abuse at a high school, and the book like starts with that, and so the whole book is about what happens after. So I think that could be another reason why authors use it, is because you have that ability to tell a story about this event rather than just a whodunit crime, which we've kind of moved past a lot in our mystery genre of books, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's become, a mystery murder is more about the blood and the guts and the crime scene investigation, and whereas a child molestation story is about survival. It's about how do people get past this, how do people live with this, and that makes sense what you're saying.
So I'm curious what our viewers are thinking about that too. So if you have comments, definitely pipe in. Also, I'll remind you, because I forgot to at the beginning, if you have questions anytime, just ask us whatever you want to ask us. But I want to bring it back to that then. So you've talked about like how murder is just kind of like, it's not as emotional and it's not as connected. It's not just another whodunit. So again, do we run the risk of then child molestation and really important topics like that becoming, oh, it's just another child molestation book. It's just another rape book.
I can't say that for books. And that is just my respect for what they're trying to do is make art. When you have 5 Law and Order series that are burning those out, then I'm going to start to question that, because I feel, whereas there's definitely still like movies and even some TV that have that artistic value, it is mostly entertainment. So whereas I believe that books are, you know, they're more than that. They're not, or at least the books, a lot of books. You read. Sorry. Okay. There is a certain publisher that is really just entertaining monthly. Yeah. So I guess that's where I go there, is I think authors are taking something and they're trying to express society and trying to help it. So no, I don't see it becoming desensitized. No, not through a work of fiction. Yeah.
I don't think we could ever be desensitized to that. Whether it's girls getting kidnapped to be used in the sex trade, or, well, boys and girls getting, like, there's lots of books about that, and this, yeah, it happens. I don't think we'd like it to stop, and I think books like this help people be more aware and of.
How about you, Leslie? What do you think?
Yeah.
Well, oh, you're going to turn that back on me, are you? Yeah. Well, then, I do think. I agree that I don't think we will ever be totally desensitized to stuff like that. People, I mean, children are so precious to us and always will be. But I do think that there is a risk. I mean, if you look at books, if you look at the typical romance and how the romances were back then, and now we got erotica and everyone reads erotica, and then 50 Shades of Grey came out and now everyone reads, BDSM erotica, and it's all just fine, and then it becomes a motion picture. Does that mean we should stop writing about it? No, absolutely not, because it creates conversations like this. But I do think that we have to be careful not to overdo it.
Yeah. And again, the medium for me is what really, because as you were speaking, I was thinking of, so like another just horrifying thought to me is being like kidnapped, right? Like in being, taken. And there's a lot of stories, like you think Elizabeth Smart was just, I don't know, it's probably 10 years ago now, but definitely, like, and there's been a few stories throughout my life of young women who are found or gone. But now you have a Netflix series, which is called, what's the one, Life According to Kimmy Schmidt or something like that. Yep. And it's about a young woman who is, kind of
unbreakable.
Kept, yes. She's kept in like this bunker by a right-wing religious person, and she's kept there for years and years, and then finally she's rescued, and it's all about this, quirky girl who moves to New York.
But it's a comedy, and it's like, comedy. Oh, ha, 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 she was kept in a bunker.
Yeah, so that really rings true for your question there of desensitizing an issue. Because I often think of that, like, what about a young woman who went through that, and even if she doesn't intentionally go to watch that.
That's what The Room is about. The book The Room is about that.
Yeah. But in a good way, right? Like that's where I was talking about literature doing something as an art form and then others doing it for entertainment purposes, and that's where I start to worry, is when something does do that for entertainment purposes. So, yeah. Which I've really been all about the book as an art form. So I wanted to ask you guys what you thought of art imitating art. So like Leslie said in the introduction, Anthony Horowitz was, he was hired by the Sherlock Holmes estate to write a book that would be included in the Sherlock Holmes canon. So it is now it is an official part of the Sherlock Holmes sort of line of work. There have been a lot of other books written with Sherlock Holmes as a character. We've talked about movies and TV shows, cartoons, Great Mouse Detective kind of thing. But this book is considered to be a Sherlock Holmes book. And I don't like that idea. I've seen that with other things. They've done it with, and it bothers me that this man who, created something, somebody else gets to say, oh yeah, actually let's let someone else just create that now and we can call it equal. So how do you guys think about that? What did you think of the actual inclusion of this as a part of it rather than just a tribute?
I think imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I think it's a good thing because it continues on that
But why
amazing...
Why can't it just be flattery? Why does it have to be equivalent? Because they've made his book equivalent. So like Anthony Horowitz and Arthur Conan Doyle both write Sherlock books. Some other authors write books that have Sherlock featured as a character, and that to me is flattery. But he is now on equal footing. According to 200 years from now, if somebody looks it up.
That he's going to live forever, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it would be if someone decided they're going to do quilts the way I do quilts. I think that's cool. That I've created this brand that's going to live forever, and maybe that's a marketing branding thing that I'm thinking about.
Do you quilt?
I quilt, yes, I do.
Oh, I really like
Not
to learn
often
how to
enough.
quilt.
Oh, apparently we
Sorry,
need to
I
have
got
a
really
There we
distracted
go.
there.
Quilting bee. Yeah, so the Shauna brand of quilting or the Shauna brand of Tech Talks, I think it would be really cool to have that live on past. So my grandchildren's
Would you want people to write under your name?
Under my name?
Well, that's what...
He doesn't. He writes under Anthony Horowitz.
Okay, would you like people to take one of your characters and write another book?
Well, if I was popular enough, I would have to see at that time. I don't know. I think it's just the way of things now too. Whether it's right or wrong. I think the thing with this, I think this is better than just a fanfic that someone's like, oh, I'm going to take my favorite Doctor Who episode and I'm going to write a new episode or a new short story based on that with all those characters. Both are great, but this has been like the Conan Doyle estate said. This is we agree that this is like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So I think that is better, which I think is exactly the opposite of what you're saying. You're saying like fanfic is different.
Yeah, I think people should have the right to.
But if you look at the way music, like people mash up music all the time. People take graphic arts and
fan music.
Yeah. But that's the way of the world. That's the way people like to do things.
But if somebody tries to take something, like if they try to take a piece of Prince's song, they're going to go to
court.
Oh,
yeah.
But that's why this isn't a copyright issue.
Yeah,
He's been
authorized.
authorized, right? So to me, that's better. I think I would be flattered. I think if somebody found my characters or my world that interesting that they wanted to live in it themselves and create, as someone that's written and knowing how much of yourself goes into a world while you're writing.
But then what if he's just hired because he's good at writing things like that? So it's not that he loves Sherlock Holmes. It's not that he lives and breathes Sherlock Holmes and was a fanfic author and they were like, oh, you've done a really good job so far. They're like, oh, you're actually a really prolific author and you've written for TV shows and you've written a lot of books and you've written a few series. And so, hey, do you think you could do this for us? So he's just being hired. It's not actually flattery. It's just a job.
But in order to be authorized, it would have had to go through many edits and many renditions. I know when Brandon Sanderson wrote the End of the Wheel of Time series, he was asked by Robert Jordan's wife to write that, but she still had to okay everything that he wrote, and it was a really long process. So
in that case, using that as a comparison, Brandon Sanderson's wife knew him. Nobody alive today knew Arthur Conan Doyle. So they could say it's what he would want, but they have no idea. They're just making their own assumptions now at this point because of what he wrote.
But he's dead, so why does it matter?
I guess it's just my question.
That's my question back. He's dead, why does it matter?
Why does it matter? Because then why does it matter to, what is the value for making it authorized? Why are we authorizing it? Why can't he just have written another book that isn't authorized by the Arthur Conan Doyle estate? So in that way, it really just grabs of capitalism and a money grab that all these people who like Sherlock Holmes, you're just going to read this because it's been authorized. Rather than the other Sherlock Holmes.
Because you're not going to let them down, and that brings us to Jason's
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say this question actually from online. We have a question that says, how does the writing compare to Arthur Conan Doyle stylistically? So that kind of feeds into what we're talking about. He's been asked, stylistically, how well does it compare with? So in your guys' opinion, what do you think?
Have you read? Who's read?
I've only read part of one.
Okay.
So I'm not a very good person to say so, but
I found
thinking
Arthur Conan Doyle was quite a classic author. So you're looking at like Charles Dickens, you're looking at...
It was very literary. This
very
was a much more
matter of
modern
fact, yeah.
writing style.
Much more modern. Anthony Horowitz did set out in his author's note at the end of the book, which I always enjoy reading, he set out a set of 10 rules for himself. So kind of rules that other people might fall into the traps of that aren't ever really there in the Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock stories. So one of those that a lot of people like to include is this kind of hint of a relationship, a romantic relationship between Watson and Holmes. And so he made sure to not include that. There are other rules in some reviews I've read, and I did notice them for myself too, like no women, and he does stray there a bit. So I don't think that it's a very different writing. It's very different in my opinion.
and the way the writer talks about like Watson is talking in the future and talking about how the story is different. So it kind of does a good segue
and that's what I
into
said, is they do give you a
how it's
segue.
different. Yeah.
But that's also supposed to be like the content of the mystery.
But I think it does still, even though it's written in a much more modern style, I think it still pays tribute to Sherlock Holmes as his style of solving a mystery.
That's what I was getting to.
As well as Watson's style of being a part of that and
yes.
recording those
Worrying about
mysteries.
him,
And so I think he did a really good job of keeping that.
And he also tried to stay strict to Arthur Conan Doyle's way of constructing a mystery. So rather than, he really followed that kind of whodunit theme. Rather than say like a forensic mystery or something like
Right,
that. So
yeah.
he did try to stay within that that similarity, but I don't think you could have changed your writing style to completely be different from what you would normally do. I think that would be very difficult.
So another question on that same vein. When should a series end? As an example, Terry Pratchett's family stopped the Discworld series when he died. Why should other authors take credit literally for that property, which is, I think, what you were saying. I think personally that that's different because in this case, Terry Pratchett's family has decided Discworld is done and they don't want another author to be part of that. Whereas in this case, the state of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, whether they knew him or not, they're the ones that decided to bring him in to write more.
I think it should be done if the author is not unable to write. If they themselves are unable to write, then I don't think they should be publishing. But I also don't like.
You don't want it to end. We don't want it to end ever.
There's so many books out there. I also don't really agree with the. So, a lot of people don't realize that, like, say, Jeffrey Deaver, Clive Cussler, who else is there? There's so many authors that a publishing house hires authors to write under that name.
Yeah. James Patterson.
And then James Patterson. So they hire writers who haven't made it on their own, who write with a similar style.
Ghostwrite.
And then they ghostwrite under that name. Mm-hmm. And I don't even like that. Like, I think that's just...
Do you feel deceived?
I feel deceived, but I also just feel like it's unnecessary. I don't feel that James Patterson needs to have 80 books on the shelf. Yeah. So I don't like the way that's developed. I know, I don't like that. Yeah. I don't like that capitalistic kind of inquiry. Like, yes, it's taking literature and making it into a brand. Yeah. And I don't like that. It really pisses me off.
Well, we actually had one of our viewers agree with you. He says it matters because it's capitalism versus creative beauty. So
versus creative beauty. I like that. I agree with
that.
But
would a James Patterson fan say the same thing?
I don't
I had it. My
I'm
daughter
sorry,
was
I feel
distraught when a book ended. The book series ended, right? She was distraught.
Yeah, but I feel like I just want to tell those people like there are more authors.
Okay,
Even
so
like
here's
James
the thing
Patterson.
though, as an author, if I wrote in the style of James Patterson, it is so hard to get your name out there. And if you have like one little book and it's on the shelf amongst the sea of a million.
James Patterson.
But everyone's reading James Patterson, and all of a sudden James Patterson is now, hey, I would like, you write in my style. Let's work together. He helps, he edits, you write the story.
Does he?
Oh, yeah. Well, he is the publisher, he is the editor. He probably doesn't have his hands on everything, but he's the...
Maybe that's a bad example.
Anyways.
He makes a lot of money.
He does. But so does the author, because
Let's not do a James Patterson.
they are now his name is on that book, and now people are buying that book. And then you do a couple, and now your name is on the cover with James Patterson, and now you're able to go out on your own. So it's really a valid way of getting your name out there and getting your million words.
Okay, so I was talking about this
apprenticeship
issue. Getting ready for this, I was talking about this issue, and this is what we talked about. So there's also a sculptor out there, and he can sculpt. He can sculpt like Michelangelo. So then he does one, and then we put his name. We put huge letters, Michelangelo, but done by like Peter Wolf. In teeny tiny letters where you might not ever notice them.
In the style of Michelangelo.
No, not
Peter
style.
Wolf.
It never says in the style. It just says done by Michelangelo. And Peter Wolf is hidden on the backside corner at the bottom in size 10 font. Is that right? No, just, like, do you agree with that?
I would be fine with that.
Darn it, I wanted you to not be fine with it.
I wish we have like a Doctor Who picture on the wall somewhere here, and it's the Van Gogh where the TARDIS is exploding.
Right.
In the style of Van Gogh, done by Van Gogh if you watch the Doctor Who series, which you should if you haven't.
Little plug for Doctor Who there.
Little plug for the Doctor. But I love that painting.
Well, and it just makes me think of the whole influencer branding. Like that's how you get out there in this world of sameness. You get influencers to support your work and help you with getting your name out there, because there's just so much out there, and to help a little guy.
Apparently I do really good in, like, the era of salons with all the, authors and the literary bigwigs and meeting each other. And,
Yeah,
I don't know.
You just need to go back to Victorian times.
I feel very
Let me
alone
introduce
in my
you to
opinions over
steampunk.
here.
No.
Very alone in my opinions over here.
So we do have a few more questions online. This is wonderful.
But you know what? It's 7:30.
What? Already? Oh my goodness. Well, anything that we haven't got. Well, we have time for one more question.
Okay,
'cause
one
there's
more
one.
question.
Okay, so speaking of imitation, Sherlock Holmes has been a very popular character for pastiche. What do you suppose makes his character so attractive for artists looking to find their own voice? And I think that's a very good question for us to end on tonight.
Yeah. Why is Sherlock Holmes interesting to authors?
I think, so not just, I think what our viewer is getting at is not just the, people that say, okay, this is a Sherlock Holmes like this.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It's that character style. And I think Sherlock Holmes is just
cool
so...
guy.
He's very
He's
Doctor
cool.
Who, too. Like,
Yeah,
very
Doctor Who as well.
different.
He's just so
He's-
cool. The way he analyzes the world, I think we all want to be like him.
Yeah.
We want to be able to view the world the same way that Sherlock Holmes does.
I love
we
that
even
we
see
think this,
that.
like, slightly demented, like, people who are kind of a little out to lunch are these really cool people that we've regarded. I think we like eccentricity, and I think that we all inspire to be individuals.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think Sherlock Holmes is very much an individual, and he's always stood out from the crowd. He is a detective of his own making. He cannot be compared to for his analytical thinking. And I mean, I think we all want something that makes us that person. We all want
Or
something
we all
that
identify in some way. Like, we all feel like we're not really part of the crowd.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
At one
whether
time
you're
or
in the
not.
popular crowd or not. You always feel like you're like on the outside. And he is definitely on the outside. And he doesn't care.
Literary wise, I think if you were an author and you were trying to find your voice, I think a mystery can be, it doesn't have to fall that, but it can be very formulaic, right? You present a problem, and then you create the suspense and the drama and the clues, and then you're going to solve it. So there's a very clear beginning and an end.
Yep.
And so I think that a mystery would be a good place to start, rather than just some, emotional, telling of a story kind of thing that is really just, a tale of the heart. So I think a mystery genre would be, because even fantasy can just be so broad, even, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and a quest, right? The word quest right there.
Quest giver.
So, and that's why you have shelves and shelves of romances and mysteries, because they have clear beginnings and ends, right? Like the meeting, the start of the romance, and then, usually like marriage.
Yeah.
In most traditional
Heading
romance
off
books.
into
Yeah,
the
because even
sunset.
honestly, even 50 Shades of Grey, that's where they went. Was
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Whatever.
Well, so those of you who we haven't gotten to your question, thank you for all of the comments and questions. We will definitely come back to them after the broadcast is over. So if you want to stay on and talk with us, you're welcome to. But we are going to do another book next week or next month.
Yeah, we are.
What are we doing?
So in January, if someone could actually look at the date, because I actually forgot the date. So it's the second Thursday of the month, right, usually. We are going to do, Jodi Picoult has a new book out. So this is the cover. It's called Small Great Things. Jodi Picoult is very well known for her emotional stories that often make you really cry. This book has a lot of tales of themes of race, privilege, and embraces that in our modern society today. So I've heard really good reviews about it, and so we are going to discuss that January 12th, Thursday, January 12th.
7 p.m.
And pay attention to Pandora's Facebook page and our Babes with Books links, because we might have a bit of a contest coming up for you next month as well too. So yeah, we'd like you guys to be able to
share
participate that. Yeah, but we will see you next month. Pick up Small Great Things. It has really good reviews, definitely on all the best of 2016
Good
lists.
Christmas read.
Yes, I've already read it, and I can't wait to discuss it.
Oh, lucky. I haven't read it yet. I'll probably listen to it.
Have a great holiday, and we will see you in 2017.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. See you guys.